seen an image of a sarcophagus, actually, which I've just put up on the screen. I'm just going to start. Oh, Jane's joining us as well. So we'll just get Jane on here as well. Good old Jane. The thing is, I think we miss being in person with Jane, don't we, Goff?
Oh, definitely.
She's just coming on now. That's what the little delay is. We'll just see where she is.
Hi,
Jane.
It's good to have a bit of glamour, isn't it?
I thought I'd already
good
turned
job.
up.
I put my slap on then.
Yeah, it's better than Mike and the others.
We've been talking about slapping earlier on, Jane, but not that type of slapping.
Oh, I see. Okay, good job. I missed that then.
Yeah. Well, I was actually told that I was actually informed by one of the boys that my innuendo today was just dire.
Dire. Oh my.
It was really. Yeah. Well, me and Goff have got a mutual friend, and Goff is really jealous what I do with his mutual friend.
Oh, I can see it's going to be fun today.
It is. Right, Jane, we've already done the introductions today. I just want to know, is there anything you want to say, my darling?
No, I saw in the news this morning that they think Neanderthals copulating with humans killed them off.
Hang on a minute. So Neanderthals copulating with human beings killed the Neanderthals off?
Because it gave their offspring anemia.
Well, hang on a minute. But people are still around. So what you're saying is people with anemia are direct descendants from Neanderthals?
Well, it's a very definite possibility.
So in other words, Neanderthals never become extinct in the first place. And the other theory could be, now this is I have muted this once or twice, that actually human beings, pure human beings, become extinct, and it was the other way around. Because when you look at Neanderthals, right, over the past 2 years, Henry, right, and I'm sure you will agree, either every week or at least every single month, we hear the following: Neanderthals could paint. Neanderthals were the first to paint. The Neanderthals were the first to make fires. The Neanderthals were the first to do this. The Neanderthals were the first to do all these other things. Or the Neanderthals were the first to speak. And then you start seeing this bank of evidence. And then you talk about this and you think, well, you start to... And the other thing as well is Neanderthals couldn't have become extinct because we've got Neanderthal genes in us, all of us.
Yeah. So, well, maybe human genes eventually became the dominant one and got rid of the anemia. The anemia then didn't appear in that particular race.
But then again, there's loads of examples of people with anemia.
Yeah, I think this is a particular sort, and I think it was supposed to affect the unborn children of the pairing.
Of the pairing. So what you're saying is that the dominant genes of the human being, as a result of the copulation, those were the ones that survived, right? Natural selection.
Yeah.
The dominant genes of the Neanderthal with the copulation, with the Neanderthal dominant genes, that child died. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
So in other words, it's the same result.
Well, I suppose it's a mixture of the strongest of all the genes, isn't it?
So you could say that we are 50. In other words, we're technically 50-50 Neanderthal and 50-50 humanoid.
Well, we could be, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Because usually the strongest of all the genes survive, don't they? So exactly. You think that the strongest, whatever was going to make the Neanderthals the better survivors, and whatever was going to make the humans the better survivors, would come together in the one thing, one person, one species.
I completely go with that one. So right, so what we're going to do now, we're just going to share the screen. I'm just going to poke my head out the door, and I'm sure some of you have seen this.
Why is he putting his head out the door as a matter of interest?
Right, folks.
He's waiting for his boyfriend, Jane.
Ah, right, okay.
Hang on, my other boyfriend, because, you know, you've got to remember Alan.
Oh, okay.
Right, so today, the topic that we're going to be looking at, and I'm just going to read out my little bit of a title here. We're going to be looking at, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Reuse of Roman masonry buildings in Britain. Now, I did this on Tuesday, and naturally, we're back at the Romans today, which is great. The Romans in Britain. I do teach every single week a class looking at the Romans. And, you know, we were doing that yesterday, and we just do anything to do with the Romans anywhere in the empire. And one thing that I do keep coming across, this sort of, this question mark, this big question mark of how much of the Roman buildings in Britain were actually reused, what was actually reused, and hopefully I can answer that today, not in my Wednesday classes, but I'm going to answer that today. So we had a good old struggle with it on Tuesday. So the image that we're actually looking at now is actually the strange thing is I can't exactly work out which landed estate. There was this was in the news a few years ago. This is actually a sarcophagus, a beautiful marble carved sarcophagus, some of the best marble from the continent, and this was being used as a water trough at a stately home in England, only for somebody to come along and say, hang on a minute, that's Roman. And it wasn't Georgian, it wasn't anything like that. It was Roman. This was actually from a Roman site. And then the landed estate brought this on the land. It was used as a water trough. And it was sold by Sotheby's just a few years ago for roughly £350,000. So it's one of the most expensive water troughs in Britain. However, that's an artifact. Now, we could say that, you know, Roman coinage was melted down and reused. We could talk about Roman iron melted down and reused. That's not what we're talking about. We're looking more in structural remains being reused, and we'll sort of a little bit of a digress to sort of artifacts as well. So we're gonna look at this little bit of a map, and we're gonna start off with chucking a couple of arrows out here. Right, and we're going to get my little annotation bar, which is there. I think, right, we've got my annotation bar. Where are we going to go with this? Right, so what I don't want to do is actually say where we've got Roman remains currently shown in Britain. Then there's loads of them. I want to look specifically at Roman remains that were actually reused for a purpose. Now, when we think about that question, do we include Roman walls that were used as later defences in places like Exeter? Yeah, that's a good one. But we don't really examine that today. So what else shall I actually look at? Where else can we find Roman remains actually being reused? Well, Colchester is a good example, but there's something else in Colchester. Roman walls being reused as medieval defences in Colchester. That's great. Yeah, but there's something else in Colchester that we're going to specifically look at. We've got images of that. Now, do we think of the Roman walls being reused as defences in the period of the Anglo-Saxons in London, and then in the Norman period, and then in the medieval period? The answer is yes, in London. Right? We actually look at York as well. Lots of the Roman defences of York are still being used. Way up until the Roman defences in York are still being used at the point of the Jacobite uprising in 1745, 1746. So we do see the Roman defence is still being used. And Mike's just joined us. There's Mike. Come on, Mike. Sit on the sofa there. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you go. Mike's just turned up. Say hello, Mike. All right. Goff, you got to say hello to Mike.
Hello.
He says hello.
Hello, Mike.
Go on, Jane, say hello to Mike.
Hello, Mike.
We've got a woman, Totty, joined us today. So she's a good bit of Totty, Jane, Mike. Can you see the screen? Yeah. Good. Right, where were we? What other Roman defences are being reused into the medieval period? Chester, that's another one. But Roman defences that are not being reused, there's quite a lot of them. The Roman defences of the Roman fort of Saguntium are never used again. The Roman defences at Isca Silurium, well, they're being used, but they're being recycled, and all the materials being used for something else, which we're going to have a look at. The Roman defences at Gloucester, are they actually being used? Well, we possibly see them being used in the Civil War as well, in the 1600s. Chichester as well. Stop showing off, Mike. We don't really see the Roman defences being used at the likes of Caliva Atrobatum. Caliva Atrobatum is a Roman city that was completely abandoned, and we could go on and we could go on and on. And actually, if you do wander around Dorchester, which is there, the Roman defences are still being used in the medieval period, and it can still be seen, and Lincoln. But Corbridge, for example, the Roman defences are no longer being used. And also Mamcunium, which is Manchester, where I'm not really any signs that the Roman defences are being used there as well. But I'm just talking about defences. Are we going to spend the whole hour and a half looking at Roman walls? The answer is no. We're going to be looking at specifics. And the specifics of that detail shall be as follows. Viraconium, Roxeter. We will also look at Isca Silurium in a different way. We will also look at, we will mention, for example, Lincoln. We will mention York, but we will also go to Dover and a few other localities. So a lot to keep us going today. But if I was going to do a lecture on Roman walls, I would do a lecture on Roman walls. Let's look at these Roman buildings. So let's get on with it. Right. Now, does anyone know where this is? No. Well, I'm not going to tell you until we actually get to it. But there's a church somewhere in England, in Shropshire, which probably gives it away, where, as you know, the entrance went to the church graveyard. You got a reused Roman plinth. You got a reused Roman capital, two of them, and reused Roman columns from the Forum. That's what I'm talking about, reuse. That's what I want to look at. Some little gems out there. And actually, nobody really talks about this wonderful piece of archaeology which is out there, which everyone can see. It's not in a museum. It's there for everyone can see. We're going to actually look at this in a little bit of detail, actually. But when we organised a trip to this certain Roman city, we actually had a lady that used to come along to our classes in Lantwick Major. She was called Jeanette. I don't know if you can remember Jane Jeanette, but Jeanette, no. Jan from St. Donat's. She was yeah. She's from St. Donat's. And she said, I tell you what, right, I want to keep in touch with Archaeology Cymru. Strangely enough, she lives in Shropshire. And she said, when you come up to Shropshire and you go to this site, I'll show you something special. I didn't know about this. Just down the road from the Roman city was the church and the reuse of this Roman masonry. Well, actually, finer than calling it Roman masonry. Actually, the walls of the church are made out of material from the Roman city. But this is a giveaway. This is like, wow. And it's not Colchester Castle. Sorry about that, Henry, but a good guess.
Did we have a trip there?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, I can't remember where it was, but I did come.
Oh, you did go on the trip?
Yeah.
And you can't remember? Did you actually remember seeing these?
Yes, I do. That's what's triggered it. Seeing the gate posts.
Right, I'm going to keep this a mystery, but for a reason that I just want to chuck in with that site. But what if you can remember back? What does this say to you, Jane?
What does what say? The fact that
is that impressive? What does that say?
Yeah, it's very impressive. Well, it just makes me think, you know, why don't we do the same thing these days? Use things from the past to build with.
Yes, and in lots of ways, lots of the material from our past has been hidden or used in hardcore and various other things like that. For example, I'll give you a good example, Jane. I remember the town hall in Bridgend being demolished, and all the fine stonework they used to build a traffic island. Instead of using that fine, instead of using that fine stonework for a building, they dumped it in a hole to use as a traffic island. When in fact, this Roman material is being used as part of the entranceway to this church graveyard. Now, this is obvious. I don't need any guesswork on this. This is actually the Roman plan for Caerleon. And we know lots about Caerleon. We visited Caerleon quite a number of times in lectures. I've given a couple of trips there. That's obviously the amphitheatre, which is still there today. We've got the some of the barrack blocks, which are on display. Yeah, so we've got a bit of a tick there. We've also got where the bathhouse is, which is there. We've got the museum and you can actually see the bathhouse. You can see bits of the wall all the way along. Yeah, we got that. It marks out where the gateways were up here. And what else have we got? We've got it discusses when you go to Caerleon, where the museum is basically where the forum is and so on. And also when you do go to Caerleon, it mentions that lots of Roman material was actually reused in a construction of a moat and bailey, which is over here in the Norman period. So that's all interesting stuff. Yeah, so that's great. Archaeologists have been excavating, for example, in the storage granaries. We know about that. There's been geophysics all the way around here. We know about an active water course that still goes all the way to the river itself. But why am I here? We know all that, surely, don't we? We really do. We must know about all this. We must know about so the burials and all the rest of it in this landscape. But I'm going to do something slightly different, off kilter. It's this building. And if anyone's ever been to Caerleon, if you go from Newport, you go across the old bridge in Newport. Start again. You come from Newport, you go across the old bridge into Caerleon itself, and over on the right there is something known as the Hanbury Arms. And what sticks out like an eyesore is a tower here. That's the tower. Now I'm going to chuck in and say this. Over by here and a bit further over here are the remains of the Motte and Bailey castellated site constructed in the Norman period. So what the hell is this? This building's a rather interesting building, right? And the reason why this building's interesting is it uses Roman material to be used at the medieval castellated site here and further over. So Roman material used, and then the Norman stuff is demolished, and then that's used to construct this. And the medieval tower is still there. But we're not doing the medieval period, are we? So why are we even mentioning it? But actually, other than the metal knight on top of that there, this tower at the Hanbury Arms is more or less 90% made out of quarried material from the Roman remains of Caerleon. So that's an important thing. This tower is the embodiment of Rome. So this tower would not have existed if it wasn't for the Romans being in Culzean. Because, and what's the giveaway, folks? Right. Now, here's a little bit of an archaeological cheat. I've taken people to look on my ghost walks that occur every now and again on a Friday. I got a ghost walk this Friday, and I go around Lantwick Major for 2 hours, and I talk about ghost stories, history, and I point over towards the church, and I say that church wasn't really constructed until about the late 11, early 1200s, and everyone says, "Oh, really?" And I say the giveaway is that most of the stonework that you can see used in the construction of the church at Lantwick Major is all the same. So that's a good indicator that the material was deliberately quarried from one quarry to build the church. And that's the type of thing that they were doing about the 1200s. When you're building a castle rapidly and you need to get it up, you take everything around you. You take material from a wall over there and a building over there, and you take a bit of roof tile from the building that's collapsed over there and chuck it all together, right? This is a sign that not only that this tower was built in the 1100s, but it used material completely from the Roman fort of Culzean. And that's an archaeological cheat. So if a building's using all one material, then it's not that old or massively old, or it was built for a set purpose. If it's got lots of material used in its construction, then it's been taken from a much earlier site. Sites, wheelbarrows of it. So, you know, if you want to start flexing your muscles and say, right, well, hang on a minute, let's put my little arrow in there. Hang on. Good. See, that stonework there is the same as that stonework, but that stonework there is different from the stonework that's marked X. And then you look at that stonework there matches that stonework and that stonework. So all of these are from 3 different buildings for using quarried material at different times. And if you want to be finicky, you could say, look at that's different from all the other stonework. So this gives an idea of age, and this also gives an idea that this material was quarried from the Roman fort itself. So a massive reuse of material, and this would not have existed if it wasn't for the Roman fort at Culzean. Let's move on again. A little bit more information about this. Now, what's massively interesting is something else that I do mention when we look at Roman towns and cities. Is ground plans. Now, if you go to somewhere like Colchester, they talk about some of the streets in Colchester being aligned on the original Roman streets. And they blame the Romans for some of the street plan of London as well. So you've got street plan. And interestingly enough, if you follow this arrow all the way from the main centre of Culzean, so the main centre of Culzean is way over there, this then leads onto where the bridge is. That's going to be where the Roman bridge is over the River Usk. So this itself is going to be very much key to understanding the Roman town of Culzean, the Roman city of Culzean, the fortress. And obviously what's really massively important is the reuse of Roman building material to construct this tower. And obviously the Hanbury Arms as well. I always take groups of people down there when I'm in Culzean. And what you can see is really good to image this. And if we zoom in on this a little bit more, what you can see is that you're looking in this fabric. And this archway is very much out of place. It's the type of Roman masonry archway that would have been associated with the Roman fort. And then what you do see again is the typical stones. These are the same stones that are used in the outer facing, the blockwork of the Roman fort wall. So these stones, that's where these stones actually come from. And if we sort of zoom back out again a little bit, again, if you look at this, what you can see is the reuse of Roman tile. There, Roman brick, there, and I think there as well. So what you're talking about is this material is being found and cited and brought from the Roman fort itself. Let's crack on a little bit more. And look at that there side on. Hang on a minute. Bugger off! It's one of those cold calls. That's what you've got to do with these. That's what you've got to do with these cold calls. You've got to say you just got to get to it. Well, wasn't that impressive? It was. It impressed me. It was. So again, look at this now. There's no doubts what's happened with this building. We know it right now. If this had been constructed by the Normans and it was all one type of stone, that stone would have been freshly quarried stone. Because it's such a hodgepodge, we know that all comes from the Roman fort. And obviously, if you look at this a little bit more, you can see lots of reuse of brick as well. Lots of it. Loads of little bits of reuse of Roman brick. And actually, I've mentioned brick now. There are whole buildings that have used recycled brick. And a building that is very important in the recycling of brick, we will start to come up with very, very soon. Now, Jane, you do remember. Come on, do you remember?
Yeah.
Come on, tell us.
I can't remember. I still can't remember where it is. I've actually been trying to remember this site for ages and ages, and I can't remember what it's called.
All right, let's go back to the original map then, right? Here we go. Okay.
It was very impressive anyway.
There it is.
Where?
Hang on a minute. Viraconium, Roxeter.
Oh yes, right, okay. And there was a reconstruction of a villa, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
A reconstruction of a Roman sort of townhouse type villa, smack bang on top of where the Roman Forum is.
That's right, yeah.
So in other words, the Forum underneath is still intact, which is quite a strange thing to do, to be honest with you. So to try and get to the Forum, if they ever want to excavate it again, they're going to demolish the reconstructed Roman building.
Oh.
Which is quite strange, really. I don't know why they've done that. But yeah, there's a really good reconstruction. I'll agree with you, Jane. It's a really impressive building.
It is.
Very, very impressive. But we're not going to be visiting that today, alas. We're not going to be visiting. So there we go. Viraconium, Roxeter. As Goff says, he's going to say it's all about Jane today. Why not? Why not? Now, this is an impressive wall. This is part of the Thermaea. Now, the Thermaea itself is part of the main bathhouse building, which was constructed in Roxeter. Now, one little thing I just want to point out quickly is just really, really brief now. Do you see the regular stones that you've got here? Yeah. Now, these regular stones would usually be used in the construction of important buildings, such as defensive walls. And if we sort of go back a little bit, can you see the regular nature of similar stones used in the construction of this? All these stones, which are the outer facings of the Roman military wall at Caerleon. So again, that's a giveaway as well. Roman stones, they like to dress them in this way. So then when you go to impressive buildings like this, it's almost as if these stones are bricks, but they're not. They're stones. Stones are stones. But where you do find the brick work is actually, here we go. These are actually all the string courses. And the reason why the whole this sort of entranceway, this sort of where there would have been a doorway, right, between two parts of the Thamir building, between two parts of the bath block, the rigidity of these tiles that go through the wall allow strength and allow the wall to still stand today. So that is impressive. Now, God, hang on a minute, Carl. Right, hang on a minute. Carl, you reminded what you said at the beginning. We're not going to look at walls that are just standing and were never reused again. Well, it is believed that this was actually called the Workhouse. And this building would have been used as stables and sort of had various other uses. And I can say that this is this is within pride of place today, because this wall has been reused after the Roman period, and there was actually a city still here in the 600-700s as part of the territory of the Anglo-Mercian kingdom, which would have been across Shropshire and Salop and that type of area. So again, this is being reused. It is cared for and loved. It's not demolished. And the other thing about Wroxeter is that by about the 1000s, the city's abandoned anyway. So it's not exactly that you could just go down the road and pick up stone for the building of your local cottage. It's quite some distance from most towns or cities in the vicinity. So this is why this is still standing. However, one thing I've missed out to tell you, again, back to Culzean. One thing about Culzean is that what you do find is that there's stories about Culzean. Jane, you went off. We're back at Culzean. So we've got stories about Culzean, and the stories are that in 1136, the historian who wrote the history of the Britons, Historia Britannium, Geoffrey of Monmouth in 1136, he wrote that the bathhouse was still standing at full height in Culzean, only to be demolished by the Norman overlords for the construction of his petty little castle in Culzean. And the walls were described as higher than this in about the 1100s. And they would still be there today, as this is testament. They'd still be there today in Culzean if the Normans hadn't demolished those walls. The strange thing is, when you go to the continent, there's many more reuses of material, as Jane mentioned. There's many more buildings like this. You go to Lyon, you go to Nîmes in France, you go to Strasbourg in Germany, you find all these buildings still standing. And they're almost loved and cared for, when we don't really have these types of remains spread across most of the rest of Britain. You've got a little bit of a wall like this in the heart of Leicester, but I'm not really sure that was actually reused. But we do actually go to the reuse of the Roman wall actually at Cardiff. And I get very excited about my Roman wall at Cardiff. Do you know what? If it wasn't for Michelle, I would have married that Roman wall at Cardiff, because I'm so in love with it. Stop talking, and I will carry on. So again, Wroxeter, in other words, this is near the Forum, where these wonderful columns actually come from. And like many things back in the day, they're saying, right, you've got a chap going along, and he's saying, he's thinking, right, I need to find 2 bits of Roman column, right, that'll do. Right, okay. Oh, okay, that capital over there will do. Oh, that one doesn't really match, so we'll put that on it. And we'll find these 2 plinths. So he's taken these to the local church, and there it is. It's great. I love it. I love what we're seeing. And that leads us in, and just glimpsing at that church as well, you can quickly see as well that the stones ain't all the same. So that's a good indication that they've actually come. They weren't, right, difference between this church and Lantwick Major, the original church at Lantwick Major was somewhere else. So then they decided to build a new church here, right? But they thought, right, you know, we're going to start afresh. We don't have a local quarry around, but the local quarry that we're going to actually use is actually the Roman city, right? We're not going to deliberately quarry out stone from the ground like we did at Lantwick Major, because we've got to build a new church, right? They went to the Roman city at Viraconium, and they got the material, and the wall itself, that's all going to be made out of reused material. And interesting enough, what is also interesting, if we go on to the next image, it shows it a bit more clearly, right? What is very interesting is that it's not just the capital, the drum, the column drum, and the plinth. Look at all these stones here. This is all coming from the Roman city as well. All of this being reused, all of it. You can see it's some of it is slightly irregular, some of it's regular. So that's all being, they thought, oh, right, this will all add up. They probably put it all together on site and cartloads. And if you have a quick look as well, I think if this works, that's a horizontal line. It's not exactly the same height either. So it's slightly distorted as well, because if you do that, you would get sort of like a diagonal line. So we're taking the horizontal with the top of the gate. So this is just being put together because the material was around. But you know what? I haven't got an image of it. I think it was something like Corbridge, a Roman town or city in the north. I was watching an episode of Time Team, right? 2 points here, and basically the lads and Carenza Lewis, you can't forget her. The lads and Carenza Lewis decided to go to the local pub, and I think it was Tony Robinson. He said, "Hang on a minute, what about these two cylindrical things by, the porchway into the pub? These look Roman." And Professor Aston said, "I do believe they are. They actually had Roman columns going into the pub, reused Roman columns going into the pub." I love that episode. And they did find what they were excavating for in that episode. And actually, at the beginning we mentioned about the sarcophagus. We showed that wonderful image of a sarcophagus. There are other examples where Roman sarcophaguses have been used as water troughs for horses and cattle, and they have been known to be reused. And why not? They're carved out of stone, Mike. What? You've just fallen asleep. They carved out of stone, Mike. See, you just caught him, right? He only comes here, right, because he gets peace from whinging women, right? Places like the Isle of Wight, you've got Roman sarcophagi being reused anyway. Did you ever come across a Roman sarcophagi being reused as a water trough in the Isle of Wight? Anything like that, Mike?
Yeah, I think so, somewhere. I can't remember where. Bryston, I think.
Bryston, there you go. We got one. So the reuse, and also look at that. Jane, you must have memories of this church graveyard.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I seem to remember you digging in some freshly excavated soil from the graves.
And finding some human remains.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's where you're meant to find them, Jane. We're not supposed to mention that, thanks. Kathy was there running around with these blooming limb bones, and I said, "Kathy, you need to put them back. I want to take one home to show my grand." "No, you're not." I tell you what, that Kathy's got her way. Right, anyway, look at the way this is constructed. These red stones here are all matching. But then again, these grey stones are all matching as well. But you can see they're all matching with various different stones. And look at the brick and stonework here, there, the red rather stone being used there. So in other words, what we're talking about is going back to what I said, what you usually find with this, right? You say, right, go to the local quarry and I want to build a porch. So you come back and it's all the same stone, right? On this occasion, it was like, go down the road to the Roman city, bring back and loads of stone back. Well, this is red, this is grey. And the stonemason says, "I don't care. We're going to whitewash it over anyway." And I got to be honest with you, that it really looks like a patchwork. It really, really does. And again, reuse of Roman material all the time, you know. And the other thing as well is, if you find a nice flat stone, right, thick enough, why not dress it up a little bit more? Carve some names into it, instant gravestone, job done. And it wouldn't miss me very much. To think, well, somebody in the 1700s in Roxeter said, I want to be buried in a stone sarcophagus, right? And sarcophagus. And the stonemason's thinking, bloody hell, that's going to take a while. They need it in a week, right? They're not going to be able to do it. Yes, the Roman city, right? What I'll do, I'll get a Roman sarcophagus from the Roman city, right? I'll bring it here, dress it up a little bit. Job done. Bob's your uncle. I've saved myself a week's worth of work, and then the person can be buried in it. Reuse. Actually, they should take a note of that today. Reuse of coffins. Actually, I do know somebody who actually does that, but we won't talk about that. The reuse of coffins. Anyway, so you can imagine that there is within the Forum of Roxeter, and you can see that there, these types of columns would have come from this base, right? So this is, again, this is part of the Forum, which is to be seen in Roxeter, and actually directly above this is 2 meters of crap. When I say crap, it's all the masonry and all the mud and soil and all the rest of it. Directly just away from there is actually the reconstructed Roman site, which is absolutely great. I tell you what, Gough is up and down like he's got the runs or something. I thought I'd say that. No, he's got a workman in. Again, looking at that, just for Jane there, as you go into the church graveyard, looking at the clock on the church tower. And we are here now. Jane and Henry, where is this?
No idea.
I've got no idea. I've never seen that site.
It was actually on the flag. You can't see it now. Oh, come on. All right then.
Sorry.
All right then. You guys know that the trips that we go on, right? We visited this on one of our most recent trips. So come on, give her a guess. You're a bit slow. No, it's not. It's not Tintagel and Cornwall. It's not York. It's not Vindolanda. This is Colchester. We visited Colchester. This is Colchester Castle. But look at that castle. What we do find is that we've got, hang on a minute, let's get my big arrows in there. What we do find, we've got this nice dress stone here, which isn't very regular. You've got another type of stone being used down here. You've got another type of stone, and you don't get a good image of it. In fact, this entire castle is constructed out of the Roman remains of Colchester. And guess what is directly underneath this? The Roman temple of the Roman Emperor Claudius. So the castle was, and actually the vaults, the original vaults of the Roman temple still exist. And if you look at some footage from 1970 on Colchester, where Sir Mortimer Wheeler describes how you look at the name Boothig, Boudica, and Boudicca, right? He's actually in the vaults, and you can actually see the really nice vaults. Yeah. So the vaults actually survive, but there's one really queer thing about the vaults. And what's queer about the vaults is that when they do a guided walk around the museum, basically we have to book and whatever. When you do a guided walk around the museum, you can either go in the basement or you can look at the rest of the castle. Well, I took one group to look at the rest of the castle, and whoever else was with me did the other part of the castle. And the vaults, which we will have a look at, when the Roman temple was abandoned and Colchester started to fall into ruin, to make a castle above it, to make a really firm, strong castle above it, they had to fill the vaults in with sand to actually support the garage above. And can you just bear with me a minute, folks? Just stay there. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Carl.
Yeah, hiya. Has it arrived?
No, is it on its way?
It's on its way, yes.
Lovely, thank you very much. What's the registration number, Carl?
What is the registration number? Bear with me a minute, folks. Yes, on the spot. Oh God, right. I just got to do this quick. Anyone know the registration number of my car? Right. Okay. God. Hang on a minute. I don't know. I'm in the middle of teaching as well. Hang on a minute. I'm just going to try and get. I don't know what a registration number. It's right. Hang on a minute. Hang on. I've nearly got it. A minute. No. Yeah. I've got it here.
It's as close
Yankee
to Faulty
Hotel
Towers
56,
as you can get.
Vauxhall Golf Charlie. Yankee Hotel 56, Vauxhall Golf Charlie. It's aboard. Take care. Cheers. Bye. Bye. Sorry about that, folks.
It's all right. It's very entertaining.
Yeah.
It is. So in other words, if anyone phones me on that behind me, I goes up there and next time anyone phones me on the other phone, I'm going to tell them to piss off, right? That was about my car. The garage down in the Vale, haven't been able to do it on my car, so I've had to bring it back up to the valleys to be sorted out. That's about. Anyway, talking about cars. So in other words, what they did, they filled the vaults in with sand, right? They filled the vaults in with sand in the medieval period, and it supported the castle, right? The vaults were really well built. They were Roman, but they needed sand in there to sort of support the castle. And then after the castle had been used as a castle and then as a prison until the 1700s, a guy who took it over in the late 1700s found all his sand in the old Roman vaults. And as he started to take the sand out, the castle started to subside. So he had to put the sand back in there. Anyway, I thought I'd give you that little bit of a story, but it goes to show that the Roman masonry is still there, is supporting the castle, needing a little bit of support from the sand. And everything, more or less everything that you can see in front of you is actually from the Roman city of Colchester. And how do we know that? Well, you know what the giveaway is? Do you know what I said earlier on? I said about the Roman tile. So there we go. Roman tile lines, the string courses, all this Roman tile. There's so much Roman tile used in the construction of this castle that it's quite likely per volume, a quarter of this entire structure is made of Roman tile because there was absolutely so much of it. Look at that, all the cornerstones there, all the dress stones. When I'd run out of Roman dress stones, they decided to use Roman tile. It's amazing. What's happening here? This is all again reused Roman material, and some of these footings are going to be Roman as well. Some of the core as well is actually the original Roman temple itself. So a massive reuse of material. Again, if it wasn't for Colchester having a Roman city, it would have been very, very difficult to have built this in the first place. And the reason being is that Colchester isn't known for its underlying geology having decent building material. It's very, very, very chalky in Colchester, that type of landscape, and there's lots of flint nodules and all the rest of it. So they're having to scrape out of the chalk, get all the flint nodules, and flint nodules are not the brilliant to build with. So what you then do, you've got to bring other material in. But in the case of Colchester, you've got the Roman tiles and the material, the limestone that's been bought in the Roman period to actually build this castle. So again, a massive sense of reuse, and that's what was used to be underneath this castle, a Roman temple dedicated to the deity, the god, Emperor Claudius, who was the leader of the province of Britannia, and that's basically what the temple used to look like until Boudica burnt it down and they tried to rebuild it. And one thing, we'll go back to the Colchester Castle and all the rest of it and show you a little bit more information. Now, this is the Bulkarin Gate, which is also in Colchester. Now, there's an interesting story about this. And the interesting story about this is that up until roughly 1750, Exeter, Lincoln, Colchester, York, probably London, lots of places in Britain still had Roman gateways, still standing. Lots of them. Now, when you think about it, 1750 is only 250 years away from us, give or take a couple of years, right? And you're thinking, well, the Roman towers had survived for around 1,500 years. So why? Oh, they're still standing today, surely. They're not. Because in Britain, we decided that we were going to build more roads. And the gateways were too narrow, so they demolished them. I've got a wonderful woodcut of the gateway in Exeter, and it's got a really dual gateway, beautiful, pedestrian access. So that's the what you usually find is you've got pedestrian access. You'd have one gateway here for in, one gateway here for out, and you'd have another gateway for pedestrian access. So in other words, you would have 4 gateways, right? But like this one in Colchester, and unlike most of the others, where they'd demolished the whole thing, where you've still got the pedestrian access, they actually demolished this so that they could widen the road going into Colchester, which is a bit of a shame. So all these gateways survived for such a long time, and then suddenly, folks, these gateways were demolished because they were widening the roads. In places, when you go to some places in Europe, the gateways remain. They just thought, right, we'll just put a hole through the wall over there. Can't be bothered to knock the gateway down, right? It's too much hassle, so we'll just put a hole through the wall and put a new gateway over there, right? But in this country, we just demolished them. So after surviving all those years, they were demolished, which is a great tragedy. But we can't go back in time and change that, which is again the problem of not having a time machine. Anyway, back to where we are. We will actually look at Lincoln. Now, Lincoln's got something called the Newport Gate, and occasionally this is the case at Caerwent. There's 2 gateways at Caerwent, the north and the south gateway at Caerwent. Part of the gateway is still there, but in the Roman period they blocked them up, right? So that's what we got. But we've got the Lincoln, the gate in Lincoln, which is the Newport Gate, which we'll have a look at probably after the break now. I'm being worn out by this. You're wearing me out, Jane. Has Adrian ever said that to you, Jane? Right, let's move on. Anyway, so what we do have with Colchester Castle is the Roman masonry. It's still there. It's still as it was. The Roman masonry. And obviously, go into the level here. This is where the Roman temple is. And then all the rest of it then has been rebuilt as a Norman castle. But as we do know, this is all, whatever. The castle is 90% of the fabric of the castle is Roman. All recycled Roman material. And why not? Why not? Why not do that? To be honest with you, we probably still, we probably still live in sort of a carpentry reuse mindset, right? So just reusing material around you is the best thing to do. And this is exactly what we're thinking about with Colchester Castle. So these vaults are still there. And they're well worth a little bit of a visit, because you can touch the walls and you can feel, right, these are the same walls that were being touched by those people who were petrified for their lives, who could hear the screams and smell the burning of Colchester as the Bulkarin revolt went through the city. And eventually, within hours, you would also be dead. Now, one thing you can see when you go to Colchester is you can see 1 or 2 bits of Roman gates. So that one's still there, but it's not in a great sense of preservation. You've got this gate, which I've just shown you. You've got also little bits of signs of gates at these other localities as well. And interestingly enough, what you do see around Colchester is that most of this stretch of wall is still there today. The Roman wall is still there today, and there's little bits all the way around here as well. So where you've got little bits of walls in Colchester still and coming all the way. So more or less most of the wall in Colchester is still standing. Now there is where you've got the original Roman, oh God, start again. The original Roman temple, and then you've got the medieval Norman castle. And that's all built in one spot. And it's just, you got a sense of real age. And that's another point I need to make. When you go around the Vale of Glamorgan, what I talk about, I mentioned this thing about in the Victorian period rebuilding most of our churches in the Vale of Glamorgan, and if not the Normans didn't rebuild. Start again. The Victorian period. The Victorians didn't rebuild Lantwick Major Church. Lantwick Major is medieval, right? The late 1200s, as we've already established. But most of the churches in the Vale of Glamorgan were rebuilt by the Victorians, and you can tell that when you look at the church. You think, oh, that's well organised. And the giveaway, folks, it's all from one quarry. All the material is from one quarry. And the greatest example of a church that's been completely categorically rebuilt in the Vale of Glamorgan is Merthyr Mawr Church. When you go to Merthyr Mawr Church, it's all the same stonework. That indicates that it was rebuilt completely in the Victorian period. So if anyone ever takes you to Jane, if Adrian ever takes you to a church in the Vale of Glamorgan, Adrian says, "Give me a date for this church. Just remember what Carl said," and you can't go far wrong. He will be impressed. Actually, don't tell him you got it from me, right? Just do it.
You won't believe me if I say it's from me.
Even better, tell him to go in the church to get a guidebook, and he'll soon tell you. But then you'll say, "Carl told me," and he said, "You've been you with Carl, haven't you? And that might cause you to have a divorce. So maybe that's not a good idea, right?" Anyway, so looking at this year, this is basically what Roman Colchester looked like, and the reason why I'm showing you this again is not only do we have the temple, and then you've got the castle built around it, right? What is really, really interesting is all this tile, all this roof tile, loads of it. There's thousands of tons of this roof tile, and not only is tile used on the roofs, it's used in the fabric of the building the structures, because there's not a lot of stone lying around Colchester to build the Roman city in the first place. So you're having to make thousands and thousands of tons of tile every single year to build these structures. And then even when you look at, it's likely that the columns of Colchester Temple, Roman Temple, it's very, very likely that that they were made of brick as well, and they were just stuccoed over and whitewashed to look like marble. Because I'm not really sure that we've actually found any Roman columns associated with the temple in Colchester. So there you go. That's another little one. And this is rather interesting. Norman Colchester, and what they're saying is that there was probably lots of bits of old Rome hanging around. So ready quarries, there you go. You're going to keep the wall. Yeah, we're going to keep the wall going, right? But all these other buildings hanging around, you know, you can sort of reuse all these, and that can all go into the construction and the building of the Norman castle. Right, so we've got that. So let's move on again. Mike's waiting for his cup of tea and a piece of cake. So there you go. So it's been a vast area, huge vast area, and again, that gives you an idea. And again, this sort of sense that you've got all this tile around. And we when we actually went to Colchester, we did actually visit the site of the theatre. It hadn't, you know, it was a great site. There was like a little building, and you could actually go into it and see a bit of the Roman theatre. So that was great. So anyway, back to this map again. Where are we going to go next? Well, you've seen that before. There's a clue. Begins with a B. So where we're going to go next, we're going to go to the heart of the country, and we're going to go to Bricksworth. Right, we're actually going to go to Northumberland. So within this area here, within sort of the Lincoln, Leicestershire area, the church that we're going to actually look at now at Bricksworth, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to get an exact site plan of Bricksworth so we can actually cite it, which is actually lacking from my notes here. So if we type in your Bricksworth, so you know exactly where it is, church location. Okay, so we'll get that up there so you know where that one is. And okay, we're gonna look on there and we're gonna zoom this in a bit more. Bricksworth. Okay, there we go. And let's show this on the screen. Northamptonshire. Where are we? Bingo. Bricksworth Church. That's where we're going to go next. So just a little bit south of Leicester, there's Bricksworth. And we're going to have a good little look at this. And Bricksworth itself is the epitome of reuse, right? So let's have a good look at that now. My energy levels are going slightly low, so I'm going to have to probably take a break in about 5 minutes. So going to Bricksworth. So there we go. I was actually right in the first place. So where that A is there, that's where Bricksworth is. And Bricksworth is rather interesting. And why? Well, when I was doing my postgraduate diploma at Leicester University, they had done a survey at Bricksworth. Why? They had done a Roman survey on a church at Bricksworth. Why? Because Bricksworth is 95% completely made out of Roman reused material from a radius of about 10 miles. So any buildings from a radius of about 10 miles, the material was brought in for the construction of Bricksworth Church. Now, Jane, it's all about you again today, right? I've just remembered, I was trying to remember if it was you who used to go out with me with your mate, was it Barbara? And we used to look at some of the masonry around Glantwick Major. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
And we used to go down the back streets and everything without Adrian knowing about it.
Yes, that's right.
Right. Adrian, I've let her in the muck now. You were invited, Adrian. Anyway, so basically, can you remember what I said, Jane? I said about main churches, local parishes would bring their material to that church and assist in the building. And
yes.
As Lantwick Major would have originally been a mother church, where's the signs of the different parishes bringing the material to the original church at Lantwick Major? And there was no sign of it at all. And I basically said that's proof that the original church at Lantwick Major was somewhere else. And the construction of the church that you can currently see at Lantwick Major was all constructed from one quarry, because this idea of bringing in material from the parishes was no longer what they did. Can you remember us doing that?
I do. I seem to remember you upsetting somebody who joined us just for the day, hadn't she? And she definitely didn't like that.
She didn't like that, and we didn't see her again.
No.
There's Goff. He's going to say you're always upsetting people. Mind you, shut up, Goff. You. There's a couple of people you don't like in the class either. Mind you, the person who used to get upset the most was good old Peter. He came up to me one day and he said, right, there's 15 people in this class, and he named 8 people he didn't like. Mind you, he liked Goff and he liked Jane, so that was okay.
Of course.
No, actually, he did say he liked you two, but I'm now struggling to find out the others that he liked.
Well, there wouldn't be many more then.
No, he didn't like Kathy for a while, but I think he gelled to her eventually. Yeah, I'm struggling. I better shut up.
Don't have your cup of tea.
Yeah, I think I need to. Right. Bricksworth itself, Jane, what I was trying to say was that if you look at Bricksworth now, can you see all the different colours of the stone in there?
Yeah, yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and it looks fantastic.
It does look massively fantastic, right? And maybe, do you know what I should do? Let's keep my powder dry and let's come back to this after the break and let's just see if there's any questions, right? Because Mike was on time and none of us were waiting for Mike, right? Mike, anything you would like to ask, Mike?
No.
Good. Mike looks like a bit of a dodgy porn star from the 70s. I should know. I used to watch those videos. Right, because I used to get them off Goff. Goff, anything you would like to say?
No, it's very good. But did I miss the bit about Cardiff Castle and I had to leave for a while?
No, we're doing that at the end. The last bit about Cardiff Castle at the end. And I do apologise in advance about the Cardiff Castle piece, right?
Next time I visit churches, which I do when I go away, I'll always check to see if there's anything Roman. Yeah.
Always. And I tell you what, you'll be very, very surprised. Always in the lower courses. If you're on your hands and knees and Alan's around, right, I wouldn't risk it. Jane.
For God's sake.
Jane, you started this. Jane.
Yes. Oh, no, I'm keen to listen about Cardiff Castle as well.
That's at the end.
That's been very interesting. Adrian's always asking me how old castles are, and I have no idea. Not castles, churches. I usually have no idea. So it'll be really helpful. That very helpful.
And actually, Jane, right? We're going to ignore the Henrys there. Actually, Jane, I want to show you something else, right? This will impress you as well. Now, what's happening now is there's a number of churches that are coming out that are in fact, hang on a minute, that if we draw a line there, the number of churches are coming out that the older churches had the naves being built first. And sort of very early churches where the naves are being built first, like Lindisfarne and also St. Peter's Church in the Vale of Glamorgan, you can probably date the nave construction first, sometime before the 1000s, right? Before the Normans. Usually in the Vale of Glamorgan, what you do find is that you find that the, hang on a minute, that's a bit skew-with. The chancel is built first, in the Vale of Glamorgan, and that would probably be about the 1100s. And then the nave follows, right, by around the 1200s. And then sometime around the 1400s, there's a fashion in the Vale of Glamorgan for building a tower. Sorry about that line there. The builders were from Barry, so they got that wrong. And then by about the 1600s, they then build the porch. So in the Vale of Glamorgan, mainly, this usually comes first, the chancel, 1200s the nave, 1400s the tower, 1600s the porch, but very rarely, like St. Peter's Church in Cogan Hall, this might come before the 1000s, like at Lindisfarne, but very, very rare, and then everything else is added to it.
So in Lavwick Major, is the whole church the same stone?
More or less, yes. If you look at it,
okay,
it's all from the same quarry.
Right.
It's all from the church quarry.
Right.
Because
so the whole church was probably built at round about the same time.
Within a few generations, yeah.
Okay.
Within a few generations, we'll come back to that again, but probably within a few generations. So, oh yeah, that woman became really upset. But then the basic fact was, I said, well, the church is in a floodplain. That answers it. Right, Henry.
Yes.
Well done. Right, we'll have a break in a minute. Right, go on, Henry, tell us.
No, I've got no questions. Thank you.
What do you mean, Henry? Yes. We got no questions. Yes, no. You're like the bloody Chuckle Brothers. Right. So, okay, then I will. We'll have a break for a quarter of an hour. Me and Mike have got enough time to have a chat.
Enough already.
Yeah, and we'll be back.
Okay. See you.
We'll be back. See you in a minute.
Bye. How are you doing, Garth? Are you bearing up all right? Sorry, I can't hear you. You still?
Yeah, I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, okay, yeah. We've been away in Pembrokeshire quite a lot, so that's been lovely.
Very envious of you, yeah.
Well,
I love,
sorry.
I love it down there. It's great.
It is, yeah, it's lovely. We're so glad we've got the static van. It's really come into its own this year.
My father retired down there in Sageston. Don't know whether you know that place.
No, I don't. It doesn't ring a bell. Where?
Carew. Near Carew.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, we're at Dinas, near Dinas Island.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, lovely. Yeah,
in between Fishguard and Newport.
Yeah, beautiful.
It is fantastic.
Yeah, anything that's got sort of the old accommodation down there this year's been a winner, hasn't there?
Yes, definitely. Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's been just great to be able to go. You know, not have to book anywhere because everywhere's so booked up, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah, everywhere. It's incredible. It's expensive as well.
I know. We bumped into somebody that has their own cottage down there, and I felt really sorry for her. Actually, she was a GP. She's only about 40, but she's got some kind of autoimmune type disease, and she's had to shield for the whole time. I mean, she looked the picture of health, but she said it's been really bad. She's been able to keep working because she's done all the telephone consultations. She actually lives in Oxford, but of course they don't have to live there if they're just doing telephone stuff, do they?
No.
So, but you know, she's only a young person. I felt really sorry for her.
Oh, there's been some terrible sacrifices made. I'm still very careful anyway. Even though we've unlocked quite a bit, I'm very cautious about when I go out and where I go.
Yeah, me too. I mean, basically everything that I do, I risk assess for myself. And that's why I'm on here as opposed to going face to face, because we're seeing our grandchildren and hugging and even kissing them, but that I've risk assessed that as being kind of the most important thing. But when it comes to just meeting other people that, you know, are only acquaintances really inside, it just seems silly to.
Well, yeah, that's right. You like you say, you risk assess yourself. I quite like this Thursday morning now because it's there's only a few of us, and it's quite pleasant actually. When there were a lot of people on Zoom, it was a bit funny. It felt a bit odd, but this is fine.
And one of the reasons that I'm in the group really is, I have to say this while he's not here, because of Carl.
Oh yeah. He's
damn, he's back.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's yeah. Mind you, I've never attended one of Jess's lectures, but I'm sure they're good. But you know, you weigh up what you want. I don't really want to go there with all the people there. There's a few people there I'm funny about, and so this is fine by me.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I wouldn't go there.
Sorry?
It doesn't mean I wouldn't go there, but I quite enjoy this Thursday morning.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we're talking about starting up our choir again, and the choir is important to me, and we've changed where we're going to be, so it's bigger, and we've got to sing in masks and things like that. So it's not ideal, but I will do that because you know, it's very important to me. So.
Well, it's important for everybody, really, that we try and keep these things going, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. How's the rest of your family go?
They're great.
Oh, good.
Going up to Yorkshire on the 13th, the next one, my grandson's christening up in Skipton. Yeah, but we'll be careful with that. But,
Yeah.
they're fine. My son had the virus. He was laid up. Yeah, but he's okay now. And my other daughter, she was shielding because she's got diverticulitis, Crohn's disease. So she was sort of locked up for about 6 months.
Oh,
But fine now.
that's good. So are you going in your car or are you travelling on the train?
Well, my cousin is going up from Cardiff. So we're going to go up together.
Yeah. I've not so keen on the train at the moment, but that's why I was asking, because I'd be interested to know how it was.
No, but we're hoping to go to Madeira in September, and we're going to go do that. That's for sure.
Yes.
We can.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's going to be a big thing. Yeah. Yeah.
It will be big. It will be bigger than ever normally, won't it?
Absolutely. I'm just a bit apprehensive about it, but I'm assured that everything's fine. You know, it's all sort of not the problem on the island. They've hardly got any COVID there, but it's the travel into Heathrow and in Heathrow Airport.
Yes, yeah.
But
it's still got time, hasn't it?
You just don't know, do you? It could all be knocked on the head within weeks. You just don't know.
How long are you staying?
Well, this time we're going to stay nearly 4 weeks.
Oh, that's a really good idea. Yeah.
Well, we didn't go anywhere last year, so we're going to.
Well, if you're going, you might as well have a decent amount of time there.
Oh yeah.
It makes it worth it then.
It's very nice there, so it's very quiet. So I'm not worried about being on the island.
No.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Oh well.
We'll see. We'll see.
That's something to look forward to.
Yeah. Yes.
I know some people who are having their children and grandchildren over from America. They haven't seen them for 2 years. And things stand at this moment, I know they're going to change it, but as things stand right now, they've got to quarantine for the whole time they're here because they're only coming for 10 days and the quarantine period is 10 days. So at the moment...
Oh, they changed that. Are they going to... Anyone that's been double vaccinated doesn't have to quarantine for America.
That's what they're saying, but I don't. It's not... They're coming. I think they came yesterday. So I don't think it's in time.
Oh, God.
I know. They'll be ready to kill each other by the time they go home.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Awful. So when are you going down west again?
Well, Gareth and Claire have got it for this couple of weeks. And then my sister's going for a couple of weeks. So we'll be going back in September.
Nice.
And then we'll probably have a couple of weeks in September, October, November. And then we usually don't go for a couple of months then. It shuts for January and February.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A friend of mine went camping down in Goa last week. And he said in some places we're charging £60 a night to pitch a tent.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
It's really bad, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a bit naughty, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I know they're trying to make up money, but campsites and caravan sites have all been able to open for a long time. So they haven't really, I think of all the places, of all the things that have lost money, campsites and caravan sites, they are the people that haven't really lost that much money. Our static site, they basically, we pay
on camp
rental. Like quite a lot of rental every year.
Yes.
And so they get that money whether we're there or not, so they haven't even lost money on us at all.
Hello.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a bit greedy really charging a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What can you do?
No, you can't, can you? You've just got to pay whatever they're asking, really.
It's on the side of the...
Well, my camping days are over, I'm afraid. So.
Mine too. They've been over for a very long time.
No,
My case.
You've got the address there, yeah?
And you know, my daughter and son-in-law got this hotel restaurant in Skipton, Yorkshire. They're fully booked right up until the end of September and into October.
Wow.
But I mean, they were shut here, but
fully booked in the restaurant as well.
Oh yes, very much so. In fact, they
It's
cannot get staff. He's advertising now for commis chef, a sous chef, chef de partie. You just can't get these professional chefs anymore.
Yeah,
because they're all in Europe, you know.
Yeah, I think we're going. You know, nobody in this country has a need to be unemployed at the moment, because there's just so many jobs going. You know, everywhere you go.
But they can't get housekeepers. They're just people to clean the rooms.
Really?
They don't want to work. Well, I know it's a rural area and people got to travel, but still, you know, there's loads of work around.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, it's not good, is it? That.
Well, you wonder, don't you?
I think if there's lots of work available and all over the country, and people aren't taking it because they're too lazy, I think that is the time that probably benefits should be stopped for people who won't take up job offers.
Well, I don't know how the benefit system works, but yeah, I totally agree with you. If there's work available, you should do it. Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, if you can't and there's none available,
that's different, isn't it?
Do you know, I there's loads of call boy work out there as well. I've been, you know.
Well, you need never be jobless then.
Well, actually, I got to be honest with you. A few years ago, whilst I'm still a budding actor, because I'm still acting, there was this escort agency, and I used to get paid £160 an hour to escort wealthy women around Cardiff. But unfortunately, I didn't like the job because I was actually being asked to do other things.
Ooh.
And these were usually big women.
Well, you know what? There's no answer to that. I just don't know what to say. Lost for words.
The reason why but I think we need to move on. I really do. I really do.
Definitely.
You know, I've been moving along in life most of the time. I really have.
I've got a question to ask you, Carl.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
What do you think about the slate quarries getting the World Heritage recognition in North Wales?
Nobody's actually asked me that question. I just posted it, and I actually thought that they were actually protected, right? Secondly, UNESCO status means that the landscape has to remain as it was at the point of listing, right? The problem is Liverpool has had its UNESCO status removed because they're refurbishing parts of Liverpool, right? So unfortunately, it's a CADU situation. You have a site protected by CADU and they just allow the thing to fall down. Is the same going to happen with this UNESCO status for the quarry? And it's a very complicated process. And the problem is, the other thing is with UNESCO protection doesn't really mean a lot, because if you look at Angkor Wat, if the Khmer Rouge came back in Angkor Wat in Cambodia, you wouldn't have UNESCO police and soldiers stopping people blowing it up. The Bama statues, I think, were UNESCO protected heritage sites. Palmyra in Syria was a UNESCO protected heritage site, and look what happened to them. So it's status, but there are certain prerequisites, and I thought, to be honest with you, I would say every opportunity to protect a historic and archaeological site is something that needs to take place, but it's the implications of that, and it means that the landscape cannot change or be altered or refurbished or renewed because of the status that UNESCO has put upon it.
But you think it was good that they did that? They gave that to. I think it was wonderful that they've done that, personally.
Say that again, personally?
I think what they did was great, making it a World Heritage Site, because it's awesome, isn't it? And I wondered whether you agreed with me, that's all.
I agree with the sentiment, but the sentiment needs to have the caveat that to keep a landscape like that, you've got to keep adding to it. For example, if you protect the woodland, you've got to be able to maintain the trees, and you've got to be able to allow a certain amount of maintenance. Hopefully that can happen with the UNESCO status, and maybe it will, but we'll just see what happens. All I know with the UNESCO heritage site of the Ness of Brodgar, nobody can touch anything. They've even got UNESCO heritage wardens wandering around checking on what you're doing there, which is a good thing. But I think people need to understand what UNESCO heritage status means. It's a very good thing. As I said, it's a very good thing. Whatever you do to protect archaeological and historical sites, it's always a bonus. It's always a yes, right? But you have to have some give.
But does that surely mean that cities can never really maintain their UNESCO status if they're going to evolve?
They can't. Liverpool has failed.
Mm. And they're not knocking anything down. They're just adding to it, aren't they?
Yeah, what's happened in Liverpool? They've added more buildings, and UNESCO have said this is not what we define as a unique resource.
Mm.
And there's, if you're going to try and keep a landscape within where it was meant to be, then that's what you should do. Right.
You don't think there's another hidden agenda with the Liverpool thing, do you? Because principally everything was built on the slave trade.
Oh.
So you could say the quarries were partly used slave labour in North Wales. So.
Well, yeah, but that never doesn't seem to count.
Oh yeah, because it's Wales.
Well, no, it seems to be anything. Not every slave is counted in this slave.
Irish slaves are not counted.
Exactly, that's what I mean.
Welsh slaves are not counted.
Quite.
To be honest with you, I am not a fan of Black Lives Matter, and as far as I'm concerned, it's nonsense, because all lives matter, and lots of people from an Afro-Caribbean background that I know hate the idea. Yeah. I've got a very, very good friend. She is definitely Afro-Caribbean, love her to bits, and she is petrified of Black Lives Matter.
You don't mind taking the knee, though, do you, Carl?
Say that again?
You don't mind taking the knee?
Right, I'm carrying on. That really
good idea.
You know what? That really to be put in my place, right? Right, Mike, Bricksworth. Doesn't that look spectacular?
Oh yeah.
It does.
But the one thing about Bricksworth is I'm going to bring in my art as well, right? I could give a whole hour talk about Bricksworth, easy, right? Bricksworth itself used to extend all the way out here, right? So actually there was more Roman material used in the construction of Bricksworth, right? Because what we do see about Bricksworth is as follows. This was an open area. All of this was an open area because these were actually arcades. So in other words, there was a, so basically you're talking about quite a chunky plinth, but this was all open because this was an aisle. So I wanted to chuck that in there. So the volume of material that's actually been recycled, what you're seeing today, is only 2/3 of what material was originally used to construct this. Yeah. So I think what I need to do is cut to the chase. Bricksworth is in the middle of Northamptonshire, between two great cities. You've got Peterborough, you've got Cambridge. Up in the north, you've got Lincolnshire and you've got Leicestershire. So it's in the middle of an area. So it needs to create its sense of ministry. This was a main minster church. So within a radius of 10 miles, those parishes needed to bring homage to the church. So say, for example, we all love the Queen and we're all knights of the Queen and we've got to serve for the Queen. In an Anglo-Saxon context, a minster church was that on an ecclesiastical religious level, people from these different parishes needed to bring cartloads of material for the construction of their minster church. They had their own church 10 miles away, right? They had their own church 5 miles away, 3 miles away, but they needed to bring cartloads of material to this church. And with a survey that done by Leicester University, we know that at least 10 different Roman sites were used in the construction of this building. And guess what? They didn't have to do much quarrying, because all they did was take down a Roman building. The stuff on the surface is the most readily available material, which is actually the roof tile and the brick, which is all over the place. Look at the brick. It's all over the place massively. Every single place you look. Brick, layers of brick. This material is brought in. And basically, the Anglo-Saxon period, the 600s, 700s, 800s, they basically said, what have you got to contribute to the church today? Oh, we've got a load of tile. The tile needs to go into the window architecture, right? Or the stone needs to go over there, or the brick needs to go over there. Some people would have contributed wood, right? This is the whole point. So this is my offering to the Minster Church. In other words, this would not have been constructed if it wasn't for all those Roman ruins lying around. I tell you what, this is a 2-hour lecture in itself. It's a beautiful structure, right? And I've got a map, right, done by Leicester University that says that the stuff there comes from that site, and the stuff there comes from that side. That comes from that side. And actually, weirdly enough, I don't think on this side, but on one of the sides, all the stones look like they've been burnt. So the Roman building that they got the material from had been burnt down, but they collected all the stones together and they used it in the construction of the church. A beautiful church, and actually, as a lecture, maybe in the future to do with some completely different, we'll do Bricksworth, and it's a beautiful site. However, we can't spend too much time on this now because we've got to somehow get to Cardiff. And as we move just up the road from Bricksworth is in fact this structure. This is the Newport Gate in Lincoln. Have you ever seen this, Mike? Anyone ever seen this? This is the Newport Gate in wonderful Lincolnshire. Okay, wonderful Lincolnshire. Now, I've always wanted to go to Lincoln, right, just to see this. Now, this is like the Bulkarin Gate in Colchester, but it's got the vehicular access gateway still there. Numpties still get their vehicles trapped within this arch. And actually, this is a metre higher than it originally was, because if we look at the other image, this is an early coloured up image from, I believe, the late 1910 or maybe early 1920s. And you can see that guy is actually standing in more of a subterranean area. And obviously the level's been built up. Now, we weren't going to do walls today. We're not going to really do walls around cities. But one thing I will say is this. If it's not broken, why build a new one, right? What you can clearly see, it's obvious that stone there, those stones, all these stones have actually stood at this locality for around 1,200 years. And actually, let's go back a minute. Let's go back to some of the original words that I used earlier on. I said that isn't it a shame that they didn't, in fact, keep some of these sites. It's a big shame that we don't have more of these buildings in Britain. Some people say that they would have collapsed. No, they wouldn't have. They would still be standing with us today. And we know that because we go to Sarcophagus in Spain, and you've got the wonderful aqueduct. We go to the Pont de Gare in France. We've got the wonderful aqueduct. We've got the sites in the Roman forts and so on. When we look at Germany, we've got all these Roman sites all the way around the world. They're still there because they've been left and they've been loved and cherished. So we'd have many more of these monuments in Britain if they'd just been left and not interfered with. But then again, we need to widen roads. So, and all these other things. So this is what happened with lots of these gates. And they were readily available quarrying material. Did you know that the Colosseum, for example, up until about 500, all the wonderful marble cladding was still on the outside of the Colosseum. It gleamed white. When they were building the Vatican City, they needed a lime mortar. So in fact, they actually the best mortar that you can actually use isn't lime mortar, is in fact mortar made from marble. So they ripped it all off on the outside of the Colosseum. But the Colosseum still stands today, the rest of it, but the marble doesn't. Do you know, when I was lucky enough to be acting on an Ealing film called Architecton, it was nominated. So I was one of the actors on the film Architecton, one of the 6 actors on it. And I got off the tube one day in the central London, and went around the corner, and I thought, my God, blow me, there's a Roman wall, right? The original Roman city wall of Londinium. Now, it was spectacular to see smack bang in the middle of a housing estate. And again, I said I was going to keep away from walls, but there's another reason why we're looking at this wall. London itself, Great Fire of London, 1666. And the only stuff that was still standing after the fire was the stone stuff. And most of the stone stuff was actually the Roman walls that were built 1,000 years earlier, over 1,000 years earlier, 1,400 years earlier. That was the stuff still standing. And actually, there was a church that we were doing some acting in Kensington called Ethelfried's Church. And that was still standing. The vaulted basement was still standing. So the stuff standing in London was the Roman and Anglo-Saxon stuff after the Fire of London in 1666, because most of the buildings at that stage were actually made of timber. Right, now, what's rather interesting, on another thing to do with walls, this is actually being cladded on the inside with fairly modern brick from the Victorian period, but this is alongside the London Museum. You're looking out the windows of the London Museum, and the outside, the external faces, are actually Roman. And the other reason for looking at this is actually a feature. Now, it was reused because what you can see there is a clear sense of reuse. So, you know, you can see there that there's a fireplace that has been placed in there in the Victorian period. A Roman tower reused in the Victorian period and earlier, and is now a feature associated with the London Museum, not the British Museum, the London Museum. And again, they use this as pride of place associated with the London Museum. Now, Goff, what are we looking at now? Which building in the country is this, and where is this? Mike, where's this? Can't think. Where's this? Come on.
It's on the coast, isn't it?
It's on the coast, yeah. I can't say any more. You've got half a point. Henry, anywhere?
Oh,
It's got the tallest Roman lighthouse anywhere in the Western world still standing. It's the tallest Roman building in Britain. If the Germans had invaded Britain, they'd have had a bloody hard job to be able to take this location. And it had the communication posts. It had everything was filled out. It had, you know, Dover. This is Dover, folks.
Dover, right.
Dover. And actually, there, can you spot the Roman Tower? The 3rd tallest building on the top of Dover Castle. Come on, spot the Roman Tower. It was so loved and cherished that, in fact, it remains there today. And there is the Roman Tower. That is the tallest, that is the 2nd tallest, the keep itself, and the third tallest building is still the Roman Tower. That is the tallest standing structure anywhere surviving in Roman Britain. Taller than Thamir Wall at Wroxeter, taller than a building we're going to look at the end, taller than anything in Britain. That tower still survives. And let's have a little dabbled look at it. Let's have a little look at that. There she is, isn't she? Absolutely beautiful. Now, again, lots of the buildings that we're looking at today, we could have individual lectures. That was used originally as a Roman lighthouse. It's used as a military defensive structure. So it moves from a lighthouse military defensive structure. I'm sure there's an ecclesiastical meaning. It stands out as a bastion of Roman representation whilst Rome has long since gone. It shows Roman ingenuity. It shows everything that I've said. If we'd have left some of this Roman stuff in Britain, it would still be standing today because the Romans knew how to build. And Jane, over to you again. And the reason why we're back over to you, Jane, is because, hang on a minute. I gotta go. Unfortunately, the image I wanted to show you is I need to dig out an image that is missing. Damn me, that image is missing. So I gotta find the image that I used. I think I actually didn't use this in the lecture on Tuesday. Oh yes. Now we're gonna show this image now. We're gonna big screen, go on. And we're going to share this one and new image. Jane, if that doesn't look impressive, what does?
Very impressive.
Yeah. And actually, this is rather interesting, right? Because if you look at this, let's just show you where the Roman stuff is, and then let's give you an idea how to indicate age. So let's just sort of look, and we got that is the Roman. That's the Roman string courses there. This is the original Roman face stone. Original Roman doorway, right? Original Roman doorway. But over the years, this has been added to clad to it. They've sort of added and cladded to it. They've added to it. So if we move up again to the top of the building and we get into this and we actually start to see there's a bit of a change of use as well. They've almost narrowed this window. This is probably Anglo-Saxon. This is probably originally Roman. That's been added. This has been added. The crenellations on the top have been added. They've added this little bit of a stone. That's originally Roman. That's the original Roman stone. And I tell you what, right? This is why we see age. That breathes and lives age. Basically, that is a representation of everything that is Britain from the Roman period onwards. That's everything. That's Roman, Anglo-Saxon, that's Norman, that's Tudor, there's everything in there. And that looked out on the day that Germany nearly invaded Britain in the Second World War. And I got to be honest with you, the big question is, I think this would have been the only remaining building standing at this locality after the Germans would have eventually taken it. This would have probably been still standing. And the reason why I say that is there were a lot in the Roman military, and it's going to sound like absolute nonsense. And I'll tell you why in the caveat in a moment. There were lots of German senior members of the German staff that were archaeologists and historians. And I'll tell you, God, hang on a minute. This is join me at the wall. This phone. Hang on, be back now. Hello? 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 Jason, you are a babe, so if I ever see you in the future, I'll give you a great big hug. Take care, Jason. Cheers. Cheers, Jason. Bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. Good news, folks. My car's been delivered. But back in about 1995, this guy sent me a letter, right? He had actually served in the British Army, and he was the guy who had actually defended a Roman bridge in Italy against the American army using it to take tanks across it. And he was standing alongside a German lieutenant protecting that bridge in Italy. It's one of 3 circumstances in the Second World War that German and British troops fought alongside each other against a common foe. And German soldiers did actually care about history and archaeology in some localities. And that's why I'm saying, if the Germans had laid siege to Dover Castle, this is the only thing that would probably still be standing after that siege. And that's why I say it. Anyway, and also if you look as well, interestingly enough, finally, before we move on from this image, just really, really quickly, right? And I really appreciate you putting up with these phone calls today. It's not usual, but I've had to get my car sorted. If you look there, Roman brickwork, more of it, Roman brickwork used in the church. So there must have been lots of other Roman material around for them to use in the construction of the church. I think that's great. It's all there. The Romans are really ingrained in our history. So what we're going to do as we sort of move on a little bit further, right, and we move on to the next image. That's sort of, I could just got to change my file a minute. And I do believe we've literally got 3 other sites to look at. So let's just get into them. Right, let's just move on to this. Oh, go on. I want the house phone to ring again so I could just go over and tell him to piss off. Right. This is actually where somebody mentioned this site earlier on. I think this was Michael. He's just got out of the room for a pee. This is actually Porchester, right? And Porchester is a really interesting site because Porchester was used on the south coast because the Normans saw Porchester having its qualities, and the qualities is there's the Roman fort. It's 100 odd meters away from the sea there. The Romans built this wonderful fort. It's up and running by about 300 years AD. Beautiful, beautiful towers, beautiful gateways, beautiful walls, the usual 4 gateways, towers and all the rest of it. And then what happens is that it falls into the hands of the Normans. So the Normans are using this site by about 1070, 1080. It's going to be used by the Anglo-Saxons. All the buildings within, the stone buildings within the Roman buildings have long since decayed. But if we look, what the Romans did, Mike, have you ever been here to Porchester Castle?
Yes.
Were you impressed when you saw the walls?
Yeah, I went in there.
What about the church? Do you see the church, which is down by here?
I can't remember. I sailed up there in a boat.
Yeah, and it was impressive from the sea, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
And that was the same thing that was being seen in the Roman period. And the Normans saw this and they said, wow, we need to keep that site, right? And there you go. Actually, Henry, yeah, it's 10 foot from the sea today. Oh, only divided by a bit of sand there, Henry. So, in other words, go on, Henry. You have a chat.
It's a seawall then.
Yes.
And you can walk all around it. I used to go there quite often because we only lived about 20 minutes from there.
Fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really impressive. Also, the tower was used as a prison in the Napoleonic War. So French prisoners were kept in there.
And yet this actually goes, thank you for that, I really appreciate it. This goes against the grain. And the reason why this goes against the grain, to be able to build that tower, can you see that most of the masonry in that tower is of one quarry? And the reason why it's of one quarry, they would have had to have quarried fresh material to build that tower, the keep, the Norman keep, because they needed these walls, the Roman walls. They needed the Roman walls. So the only thing added to the Roman walls are the crenellations on the top. Absolutely amazing. Look at that Roman gateway there, and it's all there, all intact. So to be able to create this, they probably found some Roman stonework with the Principia and everything, with the roadways, the HQ and everything in regards. They've taken all that up to build this, but they couldn't demolish the walls for the construction of this Norman stuff because they needed the walls. So the Roman walls remained and the Roman towers remained as well, being lapped by the sea today, just 10 feet away from the sea. And then what I would like to do now, we're just going to go on to Pièce de Résistance Cardiff, right? And Mike will be able to see me falling in love with another image in a minute, in a short while. We're nearly finished. This is actually Ravensglass. I've mentioned this site in my Roman lectures, looking at Ravensglass. And when we look at Ravensglass as well, what we do see is this was actually a Roman bathhouse and was actually used as a stable into the 1700s. It remained in use. It was conserved. It was loved. It was a stable. Ravensglass. This is in Cumbria, in the heart of Cumbria. And also Henry's showing off because he said he's been there. Really spectacular, really impressive. And again, because it remained in use and loved and cherished, like lots of Roman buildings on the continent, it's still standing today. This is the most intact bit of Roman bathhouse altogether standing anywhere in Britain. And then we go to Cardiff Castle. Now, this is where we're going to end today, at Cardiff Castle. Right? And you can't go yet, Mike, because you've got 5 minutes before we're finished. This is Cardiff Castle, right? And what happened I know this in my mind, right, till I die. I used to be a Guide Friday guide in Cardiff on the top of buses, right? And you could hear my voice going around Cardiff back in about 1995. And the one thing I used to remember saying was that Cardiff Castle came into the hands of the Bute family a few generations earlier on. In 1877, the third Marquis of Bute employed William Burgess, the very renowned architect who was responsible for the rebuilding of Castell Cork and the rebuilding of big chunks of Caerphilly Castle and the rebuilding of big chunks of Cardiff Castle. And not all of Cardiff Castle was rebuilt in that period because there were big chunks still standing. And I'll give you another little fact that I don't want to tell you. Did you know the reason why Castell Cork they were able to build big chunks of Castell Cork from an original native Welsh Cymru origin was because they nicked lots of the material from Llantriston Castle. So where you see one tower at Llantriston Castle, back in about the late 1870s, there was more, and most of the material from Llantriston Castle was used in the construction of Castell Cork. There's a little bit of a fact there. But anyway, back to Cardiff Castle. What William Burgess was said, why don't we rebuild the walls all the way around Cardiff Castle, right? And William Burgess said, right, okay. So he was digging down, and what he then found, as he was taking all the soil away, what did he find? He found the original footings of, drum roll, put it in there, Roman wall. Look at that Roman wall, outlined by red Radler sandstone. So they were able to build a pseudo reconstruction of a Roman gateway. This could never be done now. You're talking about price tag to do the work that the third Marquis of Bute told William Burgess to do. Probably the top price tag would be somewhere, I would guesstimate, in the region of about £150 million to build it today. This is how rich the Marquis of Bute was, to just rebuild the walls. And where are they going to get the material from? My God, amazing. Actually, one little quick fact that most people don't know about is that most of this here was actually already standing before William Burgess got his hands on Cardiff Castle. What William Burgess was to actually rebuild a little bit of this sort of shell keep here, rebuild most of the Roman wall around the outside, and then we get to the Place de Resistance, the image that makes me fall in love with this fort. It's coming up. We're going to look at a little image which is hidden over here, right? Within basically the information office. So all of this itself, if you look around here, you can see the original limestone, which actually comes from the Barry coastline, the Lantwick Major coastline, all the way around here, right? All that stuff, they rebuild the wall all the way around it. This stuff was already standing at the time of 1877. And then what happens is, maybe I might just scoot past the image. Oh, I love it. This is the last but one image. We're gonna, when you look from the outside, it's Castle Street, isn't it? From directly outside the gates of Cardiff Castle, and you look and you see the outline of the last build of Roman fort at the Roman fort at Cardiff. This was probably built between 350 and 400 years AD. Look at that. Lots of these holes are scaffolding holes, but lots of the smaller holes in here. Basically, what William Burgess was given the task of doing was clearing people from the earthen mound and the stonework from outside where they wanted to build a castle. So people were told to go elsewhere, right? However, I tell you that one of the most sexiest pictures ever, other than looking at Michelle, right? One of the most sexiest pictures ever is this image. Look at that. You can actually touch it. You can actually feel it. You can love it. If you go into the main gateway at Cardiff Castle, right, and you go around and you've got a tourist information office, you can feel this and you can look at the stonework. And this stonework, right, is very clear. And as it was left back in the day, what happened basically was as they were building the fort, what they did, they built a ramp of earth up against it, which inevitably preserved the wall forever. Right, and if you ever get the opportunity of going into the tourist information office, which is actually in the grounds of Cardiff Castle, because they've got two, haven't they? They've got one out the front, but I think it's now everything's inside, where you've got to pay. You go in there and you say, can I use the toilets? And the toilets are just around you. And you see this long stretch of wall and you're able to touch this original Roman wall. And I tell you what, I am so in love with this wall, right? I am so in love with this because it's so perfect. It's like a perfect woman like Jane. You can't let her go out of your arms. And this is so beautiful. And all this stonework is actually from quarries which are in Lantworth Major and Barry. And how do we know that? We've tested the rock, and I can tell you exactly the quarry that this has come from. It's in my own book, right? And basically, what they would have done on high tide, they would have berthed boats along the Porthkerry and Coldnap coastline, and near Colhube Bay. A high tide, they would anchor. They would settle the boats, and then they would fill them up with the cargo of limestone, right? Usually already dressed on the coastline. And as high tide would come in, the vessels would come up. They would be barges, and then they would be taken by sail or trireme all the way along the coastline into the mouth of the two rivers in Cardiff, taken at the River Taff, and they would be used in the construction of Cardiff Castle. I absolutely love this. And you know what? The reuse of this has always been used. And why? The reason why the Normans headed towards Cardiff is because most of the wall was still standing in Cardiff, and they could build this moat with a ditch around it with a shell keep under the protection of the old Roman walls. And this is why Cardiff is sited where it is, because of the Romans. It's because of the Romans that the Normans got to Cardiff, the bastards. But the fact of the matter is, that image I am so in love with. And at that moment, we're going to call that a day. I'm going to ask if there's any questions. I'm going to mention next week's lecture. We're going to be going to Yugoslavia for the first time ever. We're going to be looking at a site in Yugoslavia. And I'd like to mention as well, again, thank you for your continued support, guys. And Jessica said that they all say hello from the Lantworth Major class. There's 10 of them there now. And Lynn's come back, and there's a new guy called Steve. He's back as well. He's not gobby like the other Steve, but we know Goff and I love the other Steve as well. And I'd like to mention as well that if anyone interested in starting our online class on a Thursday looking at the archaeology of Orkney and Shetland, let me know. But what we're going to do, thank you very much for joining us, Goff.
Yeah, it was great. Very interesting. Lots of good images. Thanks very much.
And I do apologise about the phone calls. I need to get my car sorted out. Sorry about that.
You do. You need to.
You need to. Right. Thank you very much for that, Goff. What about you? We'll do the two girl and boy in a minute. Right, anything from you, Mike? Anything you want to say?
Yeah, it was good.
Mike liked it. That's good. I'm not interested in what Henry's got to say. Henry, you tell us what you want to say now. 2 minutes.
I enjoyed it very much, and pleased you managed to get Colchester Castle in there, because it is quite impressive. Also, you get a good view of the Royal Navy. It doesn't actually go anywhere because most of the ships are tied up.
Hang on a minute. You know, the Royal Navy is on active duty in the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, may I add. Not for long.
Not all of it.
Not for long when the Russians sink it all. Anyway, and lastly, Jane. I tell you what, Jane looks absolutely gorgeous every week. I don't know how she manages to do it, because Henry looks as rough as. Right, Jane.
You know, it was a really, really good lecture. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. And so looking forward to seeing you guys next week. I'm going to ask, Jane, are you with me next week or with Jessica?
You.
All right then. Can I just make a comment, right? Henry always used to say online when he was with Jessica, "Oh, these lectures are much better than Carl's lectures." Now he's saying my lectures are really good. You creep. Anyway, I'm really delighted to
Just
do
trying
this
to build
today.
your image up.
What's that, darling?
Just trying to build your image up.
Oh, thanks. I need the confidence. I really do. Thank you for that. If nobody else has got anything to say, I think we want a quick chat at the end. That's fair enough. Goff, I love you to bits. Jane, I love you to bits. And Henry, love you to bits. Love you to bits. Mike, if anything else, I'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Take care, boys,
Bye-bye.
girls,
Enjoy
hermaphrodites,
yourselves.
everybody else. English, Welsh, Germans, Irish. Don't forget the Irish. Don't forget the Irish at Waterloo, because there was probably more Irish at Waterloo than there were English.
We always like a good scrum.
Bloody Isle of Wight. Nobody wants to know. Henry, all right then.
Right.
Can't go yet. Mike.
Enjoy. Have a good week.
Henry, it's been great. I will see you next week.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care, Henry. Bye. Bye-bye.
And all the limestone from Colchester Castle come from the east coast of the Isle of Wight.
Why didn't you say that, you numpty?
Just have.
All right, you just have. Oh, yeah, that's really helpful now. It's a bit bloody late. But that went on the recording, I think. I'm just going to double check. Right. So anyway, thank you, everybody, for watching on the recording. Thank you very much. We're going to now sign out on 3, 2, 1.
Anyway, yeah.
Are you still there? Where are you going? How are you still there?
I don't know. It didn't leave me. Oh, hold on. I'll leave now.
You leave me now. You take away the greatest part of me.
The leave button's not working anymore.
Oh,